Okay, let's just jump right in. I want you to picture a building that stood for nearly 1,500 years.
It's almost impossible to grasp that timescale.
Right. And it survived the fall of one empire, the rise of a whole new one, not to mention countless earthquakes. We are talking, of course, about the Hagia Sophia.
You could absolutely argue it's the most important surviving building from that whole Byzantine era. It was
Yeah.
commissioned way back in the 6th century by Emperor Justinian the First. And it wasn't just, a church. It was meant to be this huge statement
A statement of what? Like power?
of imperial power, of Christian faith, all of it. And over its lifetime, it's been a cathedral, a major mosque, and then a museum. It's a symbol of all these cultural shifts.
That sheer adaptability is what gets me. So today, what we really want to do is figure out how they managed to build something so impossibly huge in the 6th century.
Without cranes, without steel, without any modern tech.
Exactly. And we want to understand why this one building basically changed architecture forever.
Well, when you look at it, the first thing that hits you is just the scale. It's enormous. The building covers something like 82,000 square feet.
Wow.
But the real miracle, the engineering genius, is the height. It's all about that colossal central dome.
Okay, so when you say high, how high are we talking? Give us a modern comparison, because it's hard to picture 6th century engineering.
The dome rises about 180 feet from the floor.
180 feet.
That's like walking into a modern 15-story building. And you have to remember, they did this in just 5 years.
Wait, 5 years?
5 years. This wasn't one of those slow generational cathedral projects. Justinian was obsessed with getting it done quickly.
5 years for a building that's lasted 1,500. That's astounding. But a dome that big? I mean, it must be unbelievably heavy.
It is.
How did they keep a 107-foot wide monster like that from just collapsing the walls?
That was the core problem. And that's where the architects, Anthemius and Isidore, came in. They weren't your typical builders. One was a mathematician, the other a physicist.
So they were thinking about it differently.
Totally. They knew they had to deal with what engineers call lateral thrust.
Which is, what, the outward push? Like if you press down on a balloon?
Exactly like that. The dome's weight wants to push the walls outward. So to counter that, they hid 4 absolutely enormous pillars inside the corners of the building.
Okay, so they're hidden.
Right. They absorbed the downward weight. But they also had this brilliant artistic idea. They figured if they could make the dome look light, it would feel, more heavenly.
And that's the famous floating effect, right?
That's the one.
How'd they do it?
So instead of having the dome sit on a solid, heavy base, they put a ring of 40 windows all around its bottom edge.
Oh, okay.
So when the sun streams in, it just visually separates the dome from the walls below. It looks like it's hovering on a cushion of pure light.
That's genius. It's art and engineering working together. But this brings us to what you said was the biggest problem of all.
The square to circle problem.
Yeah, how do you put a giant circular dome on top of a perfectly square room? It feels like it shouldn't work.
And for a long time, it didn't. Not really. Before the Hagia Sophia, if you wanted a big dome, you had to fill the inside of the building with columns to hold up all the awkward bits.
Which would make the space feel cluttered.
Very cluttered, very chopped up. But the Hagia Sophia is just this vast, open space inside.
So what was their secret? What was the game-changing solution?
The pendentive.
The pendentive.
This is the single most important innovation of the entire building. So picture the square room. Pendentives are these huge, curved, triangular shapes. Think of it like you're carving out a sphere from the inside of a cube. The triangles in the corners that connect the square walls to the circular top, those are the pendentives.
Okay, I think I'm with you. So these curved triangles catch the base of the round dome.
And they channel all that immense weight perfectly down to those 4 huge corner pillars we talked about.
So it creates a smooth transition.
A seamless transition. And it meant the entire central space could be column-free. You could stand in the middle and look up at this 107-foot dome that seems to be floating on just 4 points. It was the biggest open interior space the world had ever seen.
That's incredible. But those 4 corner pillars must have had to be ridiculously strong.
Unbelievably strong. But the builders knew they also had to be smart about the materials they were using. They couldn't just use heavy stone for everything.
Right, because weight was the enemy here. No steel beams to help out. So how'd they make the dome lighter?
They were masters of material science for their time. For the dome itself, they used these special bricks that were much lighter and thinner than normal, but the real secret was in the mortar.
The mortar, the stuff holding the bricks together.
Yeah, the cement. It wasn't just your standard mix. They mixed it with crushed ceramics and maybe even volcanic ash.
What did that do?
It created a mortar that was not only way lighter, but it actually got stronger as it cured over time. Reducing the dome's weight was absolutely critical.
So they were innovating with the structure and the materials at the same time, basically putting the whole building on a diet.
You could say that. And the materials were also a way to show off the wealth of the Byzantine Empire. They brought in these amazing columns from all over the world.
Right, from old temples in Egypt and Greece.
Exactly. You see these beautiful columns of green and purple marble that still shine today. It was a very conscious way of saying the whole world built this place.
And it all comes back to light, doesn't it?
It always comes back to light. They used millions of tiny glass tiles, called tesserae, for the mosaics on the ceilings.
And many of them were backed with gold leaf.
Millions of them. Now think about what happens when sunlight pours through those 40 windows at the base of the dome.
And it hits all that gold.
It creates this unbelievable shimmering, warm glow. It's not a harsh light, it's diffused. It just makes the whole interior feel bright and holy, and it makes that dome feel even more like it's floating.
It was a whole sensory experience. But that experience changed pretty dramatically, didn't it, in the 15th century?
It did. In 1453, Constantinople falls to the Ottoman Empire. And the Sultan, Mehmed II, declares that the Hagia Sophia is now a mosque.
A massive symbolic change.
And a physical one, too.
So what were the first things they changed? The things you could see right away?
On the outside, the most obvious change was the minarets. Those 4 tall, slender towers.
They weren't there originally.
No, they were added over time by different sultans. They stand over 200 feet tall and were used for the call to prayer. It completely changed the building's silhouette.
Okay, so that's the outside. What about inside?
Inside, they had to adapt the space for Islamic worship. And a core part of that is avoiding figurative images. So the incredible Byzantine mosaics of, saints and emperors, they had to be covered up.
They didn't destroy them, though, did they?
No, and this is so important. They covered them with a layer of plaster. So in a way, they actually preserved them for hundreds of years.
And then they added their own art on top.
Oh, yes. Those massive circular panels you see in photos.
They look absolutely huge.
They are. Some of the biggest pieces of calligraphy in the world. They have the names of God, the Prophet Muhammad. They hung them right on the main pillars.
And there was a logistical problem, too, right? A church faces east, but a mosque has to face Mecca.
Exactly. So they had to add a niche in the wall called a mihrab to show the correct direction for prayer. And because the building wasn't perfectly aligned, the mihrab is actually a little off-center.
It's like a layer cake of history.
It is. And the craziest part was in the 20th century, when it became a museum. Experts were able to carefully take off some of that plaster.
So you could see both.
You could literally stand there and see the Christian mosaics and the Islamic calligraphy side by side, the art of 2 empires in one space.
It's an incredible story. But let's go back to the building itself. Istanbul sits right near a major earthquake fault line.
A very active one, the North Anatolian Fault.
So how is a 1,500-year-old stone building still standing? Has it just been lucky?
Oh, not at all. It's been hit hard many times. Parts of the dome have cracked. They've even collapsed completely more than once. This building is a survivor, not invincible.
So it's needed constant repair.
Constant. The original dome was actually too flat, and it collapsed pretty early on. They had to rebuild it to be steeper and more stable. And later, the Ottomans brought in their master architect, Mimar Sinan.
And what did he do?
Sinan was a genius of reinforcement. He added those huge, thick stone walls you see leaning against the outside of the building.
The buttresses.
The buttresses. They're basically giant stone crutches that stop the main walls from pushing outwards under the dome's weight. The original design was so daring, it needed powerful help to stay up.
So those buttresses are like a scar, a visible sign of the fight against gravity.
And that fight never stops. Today, modern engineers use lasers and sensors to monitor for tiny new cracks. It's a constant effort to preserve this massive structure.
So it was more than just a survivor. It's really a blueprint for everything that came after.
It absolutely is. It bridged the gap between that old Roman style of heavy domes and the much lighter, more expansive spaces that came later.
And people copied it.
Immediately. The Ottoman architects used it as the direct model for their own grand mosques, like the famous Blue Mosque right nearby. They took the central dome idea and ran with it.
And what about in Europe?
Well, centuries later, Renaissance architects studied the Hagia Sophia's pendentives to figure out how to build their own massive domes.
So St. Peter's in Rome or St. Paul's in London?
They owe a huge debt to those two engineers in 6th century Constantinople who solved the square-to-circle problem.
It really set a global standard, didn't it, for what a grand, awe-inspiring building could be.
So really, the next time you're in a modern stadium or a big concert hall with a huge open ceiling and no columns,
You can trace that back.
you can trace the engineering concepts that make that space possible all the way back to the guys who figured out how to balance a 15-story dome on 4 pillars almost 1,500 years ago.
The Hagia Sophia really is a living history book, made of stone. It shows how engineering genius and cultural change can all be preserved in one place.
Good luck with your studies.